July 14, 2025. South Korea tested a 130mm tank gun successfully. This is not just another weapons test. This is Korea picking a side in a war most people do not know is happening. NATO has a problem. The 120mm gun standard from the 1980s can no longer defeat modern armor. Germany says, upgrade to 130mm. USA says, stick with 120mm and use better ammunition. Korea says, we tested 130mm. It works. And we are about to flood Europe with tanks. Poland wants 1,000 K3s. Romania is watching. Norway is watching. If Korea exports 130mm tanks faster than Germany can build them, Korea does not just sell weapons, Korea sets the standard. Everyone talks about the K3's hydrogen engine. Nobody talks about the gun. That is the real story. For over 40 years, NATO's tank fleets have relied on a single ammunition stream, the 120mm smoothbore gun. This standard, born in the 1980s, was not just about firepower. It was about keeping alliance logistics simple and costs predictable. Tanks from Germany, the United States, the United Kingdom, and France all fired the same rounds, built on the same design, and supplied from shared depots. Factories in multiple countries produced compatible shells, and armies trained crews and mechanics on a common system. This approach delivered real savings and made it possible to resupply any NATO force quickly, no matter whose tank needed ammunition. The logic behind this standardization was clear. During the Cold War, Soviet armor upgrades forced NATO to respond. But instead of chasing ever larger guns, Western armies chose to stretch the performance of the 120mm gun, lengthening barrels, refining propellants, and introducing advanced sabot rounds. When Germany's Rheinmetall proposed a 140mm gun in the 1990s, the alliance hesitated. The cost and complexity of fielding a new caliber, new loaders, new storage, new everything, outweighed the marginal gains in penetration. The single-stream logistics model held. Now, advances in composite and reactive armor have started to outpace what the 120mm can reliably defeat. The old consensus is under pressure. A caliber change is not just a technical upgrade, it is a disruption to decades of carefully built supply chains and alliance habits. The question is no longer just about hitting harder, it is about whether NATO can afford to split its ammunition ecosystem, or if it will stick with what it knows even as threats evolve. On July 14, 2025, Hyundai Rotem fired the first production intent 130mm smoothbore gun from a K3 prototype, setting a new technical benchmark for main battle tanks outside NATO's traditional suppliers. This was not a lab test or a one-off demonstrator. The gun was integrated into a full-scale unmanned turret, with no crew inside the turret itself. Instead, the crew sits together in an armored capsule at the front of the hull, relying on sensors, cameras, and digital fire control for all targeting and situational awareness. The autoloader, built from the start to handle the size and weight of 130mm ammunition, cycles each round in under 4 seconds, keeping the tank's silhouette low and eliminating the need for a fourth crew member. The test sequence included both static and moving shots, with the gun achieving muzzle energies nearly 50% higher than the best 120mm L-55 systems. Engineers recorded consistent loading even at sharp angles and during rapid maneuvers, confirming the reliability of the autoloader under combat-relevant stress. The K3's turret architecture is modular, designed to accommodate a possible upgrade to a 140mm gun if future threats demand it. This forward compatibility is not just a technical flourish, it is a hedge against the risk of another standard shift, one that could force buyers to retool factories and retrain crews yet again. Hyundai Rotem's approach links firepower, automation, and production logic into a single package. The unmanned turret and autoloader enable higher rates of fire and reduce crew risk, but they also reshape how tanks are built, maintained, and supplied. With the K3, the question becomes not just how hard a tank can hit, but how quickly an army can field, reload, and sustain an entirely new caliber at scale. Rheinmetall's KF51 Panther promises more than just raw firepower. The The company claims its 130mm gun delivers nearly 50% more muzzle energy than the best 120mm L55 systems, with new APFSDS rounds like the M1E3 in development. But industrial reality tempers these figures. Rheinmetall's current output stands at about 12 tanks per year, an order of magnitude below projected European demand. Even if every Panther left the line with a 130mm gun, the pace would leave buyers waiting years for delivery. Italy, once a likely KF51 customer, has now opted for a 120mm L55A1 turret, citing the logistical advantages of staying with NATO's established caliber. Their official rationale points to easier supply and maintenance across alliance lines, with the 130mm option left as a future possibility rather than a current commitment. Hungary's Panther Evio follows the same path, fielding the 120mm baseline for now. For many procurement officials, the cost of switching is not just about higher per-round prices, though 130mm ammunition is heavier and more expensive to manufacture. It is also about whether the supply chain can keep up with operational needs. Buyers are watching not just for technical breakthroughs, but for proof that a new standard can be delivered at scale. The U.S. Army's approach to the next generation of main battle tanks is shaped by a simple economic reality: tens of thousands of 120mm rounds already stored in NATO depots. Instead of adopting a new caliber, the upcoming M1E3 Abrams will keep the 120mm gun, betting on a new family of advanced ammunition to close the gap with larger guns. This roadmap includes the development of next-generation penetrators and programmable rounds, all designed to fit existing barrels and autoloaders. The logic is straightforward. Replacing the entire 120mm stockpile would mean scrapping billions of dollars worth of ammunition, retraining crews, and rebuilding supply chains from the ground up. By sticking with the 120mm caliber, the U.S. preserves the alliance's largest pool of tank ammunition, ensuring that any NATO force can be resupplied quickly in a crisis. But this conservative path has its own risks. If other countries move to 130mm or beyond, NATO could end up with parallel supply chains, one for legacy 120mm users and another for new caliber adopters, doubling logistics costs and complicating alliance operations. For the U.S., the choice is not just about firepower, it is about protecting sunk costs and keeping the logistical advantage that comes with scale. Poland's tank procurement offers a rare test of industrial scale in real time. Under its framework agreement with Hyundai Rotem, Poland plans to field 1,000 new main battle tanks, 180 K2s, and 820 K3PLs by the mid-2030s. The numbers are more than symbolic. By 2028, the Bumar Labadi assembly line in Gliwice is scheduled to reach an output of at least 50 tanks per year, a pace that far outstrips what European factories can currently deliver for any next-generation design. Hyundai Rotem's leadership has been blunt, with demand for more than 1,000 new tanks across Europe. The real bottleneck is not technology, but production speed. Everyone talks about hydrogen, nobody talks about the gun, a company vice president quipped, pointing to the quiet power of supply chains over headline features. The K3PL's baseline is a 130mm gun, but the contract includes provisions for a 140mm upgrade if threat assessments change. In this context, the ability to deliver tanks and ammunition at volume becomes a deciding factor, outpacing technical debates and setting de facto standards simply by being available when buyers need them. Buried deep in Poland's K3PL contract, a clause allows a future upgrade to a 140mm gun, a detail that speaks volumes about how buyers and suppliers are hedging their bets. The K3's turret and autoloader are engineered with enough margin to accept a larger caliber if threat assessments shift, or if another round of standards competition breaks out. This is not a new idea. Back in the 1990s, Germany's push for a 140mm main gun fizzled when the costs and logistics of a bigger shell outweighed the promise of greater penetration. Today, the 140mm option acts as strategic insurance, letting countries like Poland lock in a path to more firepower without committing to an unproven standard. For procurement officials, it's a way to future-proof billion-dollar investments against the risk that NATO's next consensus might change yet again. As Romania weighs its own tank purchase, the question is not just which gun is best, but which standard will actually hold. Romania's defense ministry launched a tender in 2025 for 216 new main battle tanks, setting off a contest that stretches beyond firepower or armor thickness. The contract, valued at 6.5 billion euros, attracted offers from both German and Korean suppliers, each promising not just advanced tanks, but a future-proof supply chain. Hyundai Rotem's bid included a proposal worth 535 million euros for a domestic assembly plant, aiming to anchor local industry and guarantee rapid delivery. For Romanian decision-makers, the choice is about more than a technical edge. It is a verdict on which caliber and which logistics network will define their army and perhaps set the direction for NATO's next standard. The outcome will be closely watched by every country weighing its own path through the alliance's evolving armor landscape. Splitting NATO's tank gun calibers would mean running two parallel supply chains for everything from shells to training manuals. Each new caliber doubles the need for storage, transport, and maintenance resources, raising costs and slowing response times in a crisis. NATO's logisticians warn that even a small split can snowball into full-scale duplication, much like the VHS versus Betamax standoff that left users stranded on incompatible formats. The lesson is clear: every divergence in ammunition standards brings new budget strains and operational headaches. Before adopting a second caliber, alliance planners face a choice: audit the real costs, pool resources, or risk a future where interoperability is lost not in battle, but in the warehouse. As Europe faces a demand for over 1,000 new tanks, the next NATO gun standard may hinge less on raw firepower and more on who can deliver at scale right now. In this standards war, industrial capacity, not headlines, writes the future. The battle for compatibility is just beginning.